Today on the Soundiron podcast, we have Jesse Zuretti. Jesse is an award-winning composer and sound designer who's worked on projects for Marvel, Netflix, Riot Games, you might have heard of those, many more. And he's also an orchestrator and guitarist in the metal band Doth. So Jesse, welcome to the pod.
Yeah, thanks for having me. I love the Soundiron stuff. Was messing around with Flatulous recently, so it's good to
that's always
good
a
to put
good
a fart
one.
to the face.
Yeah, you know, sometimes you need to switch it up. They can't all be, cool cinematic.
It's a very
orchestral sounds.
intimate personal library for sure.
The demo for it is incredible. Like one of the demos I heard was insane. I don't know who did it, but they're amazing.
Yeah, that was Spencer. Yeah, he went all blastastic on that one.
It's real good.
So my first question for you is about your website. It's got tons of personality, and not to brag, but I've looked at a lot of composer websites over the years, and this is one of the best I've ever seen. So we will have to link it. But you've kind of got a foot in multiple industries, and you have a really great layout of how to guide people around, like based on what they're looking for. So could you talk about the origins of your website, and then like how you learned to write? Because you're good at ad copy, like marketing as well.
Oh. Wow, thank you for the compliments across the board. It's it's like one of those things where like I did it and I'm like, I don't know if anybody's going to appreciate this, but yeah, I used to be a creative director in the musical instrument industry for a decade before I started composing full time in 2018. So it's kind of funny because I never was given quite the amount of control over building a website or brand or user experience the way that I wanted to. And with my own website, I got a chance to do that. And I've always, I tell people, I'm like, you got to have some personality to this. It can't just be like all sales and like hard selling people on things and making yourself sound amazing. You got to like relate to the consumer or whoever it is that's looking at your website, right? So with my website, I was like, all right, I know who's going to be looking at my website. I don't want to make them feel like I'm not approachable. And I don't want them to feel like, that I think I'm the shit,
Sure.
like I'm, I want it to be humble and fun. So I just tried to make it, I don't know. I just wanted people to feel comfortable with looking at my stuff, which I need to update it. It's pretty out of date at this point, but, yeah, I just, that's pretty much the short of it. Is I got an opportunity to do how I would do it. And, I do get like once in a while, somebody will point out like, hey man, your website's really made it easy for us to know what we're looking for. So the homepage, I just wanted it to be like, listen, if you're a game studio and you want to get in touch with me, like, here's how you do it. Here's what I've done. And similarly, like if a band wants me to do orchestra or sound design or synths or something on their record, they know what to look at, and just make it really obvious. Answer as many questions as humanly possible before reaching out, so people really know what they want to say, because I think the information aspect of deciding about working on a project is really important. So you don't waste anybody's time, theirs or mine. And yeah, just try to make it easy. I need to update it though. It's been a while.
That's it. Isn't that every website? So it was
yeah, basically. Yeah. I've added some of the band stuff recently, but I'm missing probably hundreds of pieces of music that finally are out of NDA. So
what are some of the inspirations visually for the website that you had? It looks kind of reminds me of like kind of almost like comic book in some ways. And is there like certain inspirations visually that you wanted to have on there?
Yeah, definitely comic book. I kind of wanted it to feel like an indie game too, like something that, somebody made with like a small team or something, where it just felt like, the spirit of the people working on it was really in it. So, and since it was just me, I just kind of went all out on that aspect of it. But for the most part, it's Squarespace. Like there's no like secret to it. It's a Squarespace site, which is super easy and accessible. Like I feel like if you can make a social media account, you can probably make a Squarespace website at this point. It gets better all the time. Like they're constantly improving it. So it becomes more functional as you go on. It just requires, a little bit of effort, as long as people put, I think for us very particularly, like as musicians, like if we're offering our services to people, they need to like see that personality a little bit. Some people really lean into the like sterile kind of business aspect of it. And if somebody wants you to work on like a tongue-in-cheek kind of like indie game or something, right? Like whatever it is, like, and it's too sterile, that might not be their brand. They might want somebody who's a little bit more connected to the art form that they're making. And that's kind of my suggestion to people. I do get asked a lot about like branding and stuff and how to go about it. And I always tell people, I'm like, listen, if your brand is like sterile corporate business, then definitely go that way. But it's not really common at least in games.
It's not your target audience. Yeah, like
Yeah.
it's like you could have a ill-fitting suit and tie and be like buttoned up, but the reality is like most of us are composing music in our boxers in our studio at home. It's like that's the reality, and we're working on fun projects like energetic music, and so music doesn't have to be stiff.
Well, yeah, I mean, you think about like, have you ever been to NAMM?
Mm-hmm.
When somebody's wearing a suit and tie, you already know automatically that guy is like in sales or something for the brand that they're representing. I've had friends who are like kind of metal, or like, they do composing, they're younger, and they wear a suit and tie to something like that. And I'm like, what are you trying to do? Blend in with these people nobody wants to talk to?
Yeah. Like, oh, you're that corporate guy who works for Yamaha or something like
exactly. Yep. Yeah, exactly. I'm just kind of trying to remind people that like professionalism comes in a lot of different forms. Like your body of work can speak volumes. I mean, there's some people where that brand fits perfectly, by the way. So like, there's nothing wrong with that. There are some people who are just straight up like that. I know metal people who are like that. I know people who are just all business, even with their band, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But for me personally, I'm trying to connect with people who share a common denominator of creativity that I look for, and I want them to see that I have that same thing. So I just try to make it easy.
Nice. Yeah. Not everyone can, just roll up in there like Big Lebowski and just chill,
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. There's going to be people like that too. There's going to be the guy that's, basically the Big Lebowski composer, and he's going to get very specific gigs based on that personality type because it's going to fit. And that's the way it goes.
Yeah.
That's cool that person has that gig then.
Yeah. So one of the things I wanted to talk about, because with the recent news of you hopping on and working with Riot Games, which congrats, that's super cool.
Thanks, man.
I wanted to talk a little bit about, because like I always think it's interesting when I see guys who are in bands kind of transitioning over into the composer world. So I wanted to have you talk a little bit about that part of your journey before the more recent news. So I was just kind of curious, like, how did that all unfold, and how did you sort of steer your musical path into composing for games and the Marvel thing in particular?
So my band, we started out as like a technical metal band, back in 2004. And I never really, it was always very collaborative in terms of the writing process. And then when, just going through a lot of band member changes like we all do, there were moments where I had an ability to just kind of take control over the writing process in between finding people to fit where I was trying to go. We always changed, like we never stayed the same. Some bands will put out just like better production versions of the same sound basically over and over again. There's nothing wrong with that. There's consistency to that. I would be a terrible product to buy at a store because it's going to be different every time. You'll come back and be like, whoa, I thought this, was going to be like this. No, it's just going to change constantly. I get bored doing the same thing over and over again. So over time, I kind of got the ability to take a little bit more creative liberties since I was the only one in the band from the beginning. And I eventually just kind of started getting cinematic without knowing it. And my bass player at the time, Mike, he was like, yeah, dude, this is like cinematic metal. Like, it's really cool. This is like 2014. And I just kind of leaned into that because I didn't hear that term being used very often at that point. And in 2017, we finished recording a record that was basically, like very Zimmer, Danny Elfman kind of influenced stuff without knowing it really. I mean, like I knew where it was coming from, but I wasn't like consciously doing that on purpose. It just kind of happened. And I had no experience, composing in that regard, like, trying to do strings, trying to do brass and stuff like that. I wasn't really trying to do that. I wasn't like in 2017, like, oh, I want to be a composer someday. It wasn't really like my thought. And the record came out great. It's the only record that I'm like super proud of, believe it or not, after what's this? It'll be 20 years in April. It's the only record where I'm like, I could listen to this record. Like, it's one that I actually made where I'm really proud of it. And it's pretty cinematic, and it's also very much like where I wanted to be with the band all along. And that got noticed by the right people, and happened to be make friends with somebody at Marvel who acknowledged like what I was doing with the metal stuff, and like how it could possibly translate into something that they were doing at Marvel. And when they asked me to do music, I was completely shocked by that. Of course, I was like, "What? Really? Okay." So I did it, and the first thing that I composed, I'm completely embarrassed of. Obviously, it was for this. Well, it's not the worst thing in the world. It's just like very mid-century modern kind of cook show sounding music for this like robot chicken animation thing I did for Galactus, which is like my favorite character. Which, believe it or not, I didn't get hired to do the music for that. I got hired to do the voice acting for it, and which was also weird because that was another thing I wasn't trying to do. It was kind of like hey, like we know how much you love Galactus, you want to do this, and I was just like, of course I do. And then they're like, oh, it needs music. You want to do the music? Oh, of course I do.
Oh,
You're
wow.
like, yes, 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 yes,
Yeah,
yes.
of course. And it was that like typical, like jingly kind of mid-century modern sounding, which I love that stuff, by the way. Like I could see myself in another lifetime being a jinglist or whatever you want to call it. I don't know what you would call it. But I kind of like semi came up with the idea for the series that I worked on with them, and it won a Webby Award. And yeah, I got really lucky with that. And then I didn't know that like I should have been promoting myself as a composer at this point. I was very much like a band person, and I was happy with that. And my close friend and bandmate A.L. Levy, he said like, you got to promote yourself. You got to get yourself out there because this what you're doing is worth it. And I did, and I didn't realize that like other people thought that way. Just total imposter syndrome type of stuff.
Oh yeah.
And yeah, then the pandemic happened, so that was great. Literally won the award in May of 2020, which is probably the worst part of the pandemic. I would say like everybody didn't know if they had a job or anything like that at that point. So it was not the best timing, but also like all those people were at home, so they were available to read emails, which is kind of nuts. Yeah, and I just started promoting pretty heavily. And then getting to this point of working with Riot was just, I did a demo for a AAA studio last year around this time. And I guess like some word of mouth stuff happened, and became really good friends with one of the guys at Riot, Mike Pittman, who's also in a metal band, by the way. He's in a band called Zareth with an X. They were on Candlelight Records. They're like a Devin Townsend, Steve Vai, Dimmu Borgir type of thing. Like real, I was a huge fan of this band before Mike and I started talking.
Oh wow.
And yeah, we just started like session sharing and having conversations. And then like randomly after meeting a bunch of other people I knew at Riot at GDC, I got asked to work on the game that we're working on, which was completely unrelated to anybody that I met at GDC, which was kind of nuts. So yeah, and here we are, still going, working on the whole thing now.
That's awesome. What are some of the early challenges that you encountered when you were first working on the Marvel games, especially kind of like not really being from that background? Was there any specific challenges that you learned from that really kind of helped you?
Oh yeah, definitely. It's one that I think is really hard to teach. It's the deadlines that they had were really intense. The series that we worked on, every episode had to come out on the date that the comic book character was released for the first time. So if like Ant-Man was like August 6th, 1950, whatever, I don't remember what it was, then the episode had to come out on that date. And we had like TV level deadlines. So it was kind of like, all right, so this comes out on Thursday, August 6th, whatever, 1956, and we're putting it out in 2020. I'll get like the graphics and everything. Like I get the full spread of creative assets probably like 3 days before. And I had to track, I had to write the music. I had to do all of the effects and sound design and the voiceover. All of that had to get done. So it was,
oh wow.
And it was, we did a lot of these, by the way. Like there was 2 seasons worth of it. It was brutal.
It was like every week that you were doing that, or?
There were some weeks where they were back to back. Most of the time it was like kind of like a waiting game and like finding out. I tried really hard to get the creative director to be like a little bit more proactive about getting me assets, and it was just like met with no response basically. So I tried really hard because I didn't know that this is like kind of part of how it can be for these types of things. And they just didn't respond. So it was a lot of research, basically. I mean, like very, very fortunately, these characters have like rhetorical backgrounds that you can basically look up. They have like Marvel Wiki, but I also have like all these books, which is kind of where the idea for the series came from. I basically opened this Marvel book that has all the characters and their backgrounds, and I opened it and was picking characters with my drummer and was writing music to it. And I showed it to my friend at Marvel, and they were like, this is great. I feel like we can make a series based off of this. And like, that's how it kind of came together. So I was able to do that at least, where I could, like, okay, we're doing Luke Cage, then I can do some research on it and, do the background, which, by the way, like, you have to do the research because a lot of people will think of Luke Cage and they'll think of the Netflix series, but they don't realize that his character is like more 70s inspired and it's not modern. So then like, you can't do modern sounding music. You got to think back 40 years at that point. So yeah, you could do a lot of research, but still had to nail everything down to a science. And also too, because of the magnitude of the company being as this is like peak Marvel, I call it, this is like Endgame, Infinity Wars era Marvel. Everything had to be done from scratch. Nothing could be like, oh, I can't go to pro sound effects library and get anything. Like I had to do everything from scratch. It was rough.
Crazy.
And I had never done it before.
Yeah, that's wild. How did you manage your time as far as like, okay, you got 3 days. Is it like one day you just solely just crank out music, the next day you're worrying about sound effects and then the voiceover, or are you kind of like chunking that out throughout the day, or how'd you go about that?
Well, I was also working full time as a creative director too. So like I was working 45, 50 hours a week. And then it would be like, hey, like we have the creative assets and I'm getting that news while I'm at work. So I would leave work, get home at 9 o'clock and then work till like 6, 7 in the morning and then get up and go to work and just kind of go through that motion, which I had just done the year before starting with them. For the record, every day that we recorded, I worked. So I would work, 8 a.m. to like 3 p.m. at work and then record from 5 o'clock to like 3 in the morning and then just start over. So like I thought like I was at the end of that nightmare process. And then it was like, oh, you're going to do the same thing all over again. But then eventually I was like, all right, I need to pick a lane here. Am I going to keep doing this creative director thing? Or, it's a terrifying decision to make. So not only did I stop working for that company, but I also moved out of state. I really wanted to challenge my comfort zone. And I just kind of took myself away from like being able to hang out with friends and hang out with family and be distracted. And I threw myself to the wolves and just left completely. And it was probably for the best, honestly. It was a really good decision, I think. But I had no process. I didn't know what I was doing. But I realized very quickly that I was able to like push through those moments of like, I really don't feel like doing this right now. A lot of songwriter musicians write when they're inspired. And I think that's the shelf life on that for a composer is like really short. Like if you only write when you're inspired, then like your clients they won't work with you anymore. So especially with a company like Marvel, like you have to be inspired to write something for them. Like you wouldn't be able to put out one track. You have to write when they ask you to. And that was rough.
I feel like I got to be inspired and the inspiration has to end on August 16th. That's what needs to happen.
Yep. Yeah, good luck. You can't even like a band can't even be told by a record label like, hey, we need this record by this date, and they'll turn it in on time. They'll ask for extensions, they'll do it last minute, like doesn't work in this line of work. And the funny thing is too, is I hear a lot of composers say this stuff too. I hear them tell people like, yeah, you got to be able to make deadlines and like fight through, the urge to not like want to work and play games or sleep more. And then they even mess up. So it's hard even for people who like have that science already kind of like in their mindset and like they still struggle with it. We all do. And it's going to be a lifelong thing. You just got to know how to talk to yourself basically. And that's kind of, I think that's one of the skill sets that's a requirement for being a composer full time is can you push through those moments and not wanting to do stuff?
Yeah, especially in a creative sort of environment, because it's different when you're like working at a factory job. It's like, all right, you have this, you put A into B, you do this, there's a chain, like unless something breaks, then like you're basically just kind of like a robot moving. So it's easy to just like, all right, I'm going to do 16 hours of this because it's just more of like the physical fatiguing aspect of it. But when it's like you're building something from scratch or something new every single time, and you have to really, because that's very taxing, can be very taxing physically, even though you're just kind of like, mentally doing most of the work. Yes. It's physically exhausting. And then you're just like, you just sit there. And then if you're not feeling it, and then you start getting bummed out, you start getting down on yourself. Oh, I'm not meant for this job, so then you have to like battle that aspect. So it's like trying to just keep everything and like, all right, no time to think about that. It's just time to go. And deadlines and things like that are a great way to sort of get things going quicker. Because there's like, there's just someone right behind you with a gun, just keep pushing you forward. Like, just make it happen, dude.
Yeah. And another part of it too, that's really hard. It's like another muscle that needs to be developed is like knowing when you're on the right track. Like, is this the right thing so far? Because one thing that I got really lucky with at Marvel is, I knew when I wasn't on the right track. So I only had one track rejected the entire time I was working there.
That's good.
And they just said it was too dark. They're like, this is too dark for Daredevil. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, this character is pretty dark. Like, you should know.
He's literally blind.
Right, exactly.
I didn't think about that.
The whole entire like thing with him as a kid and like how he got his powers and everything, like it's pretty dark. Like if that was real life, if that like a kid got hit by a truck and some stuff spilled out of it and like he, all this, that's horrifying, right? So they said it was too dark. So I dialed it back. they liked the track. They kept it in the library regardless. But like the skill set there was really just that I think I was really good at getting rid. I've never kept stuff that I don't believe in. So I know some people just have like, oh, dude, I got a computer and it's filled with like all these demos. Like I never did that. I just get rid of stuff. Like if I'm like, this sucks or this sounds too much like something else, then I just delete the session. I'm like, get rid of it. What am I going to do? How am I going to sell somebody on this track and tell them that it's good if I'm not even confident in it? So I kind of did that with Marvel, and I didn't really deal with a lot of pushback on the tracks that I wrote because I don't think there would have been time for revisions in the first place. So, and nobody told me any of this, by the way. Like they didn't have a music department like that. They didn't have a person who did what I did there. So I was I was the thing for this. They created that job, and nobody was telling me like what their expectations were. It was just like a lot of like when you're in a band and you're the guy who runs the band, you're already like kind of signing up to learn a lot about management and people, and expectations are already there. And I think that kind of helped, but could also just be personality type, like being a creative director. Like I know how to deal with people, therefore I should know how to deal with myself. I think it was just a lot of luck. Perfect storm. Also too, like I have this moment still to this day where when something's really stressful, like by the way, my experience with Riot is a complete opposite. The people at Riot are very passionate about their music. Everybody that works there loves music. They have 5,000 employees. I'm assuming they all love music. Like it's a huge part of their lives. And the in-house team at Riot is incredible. And even the producer of Netflix, Arcane, Christian Linka, he's a huge music fan. So like the expectations there are completely different than Marvel. Like they care deeply about music, and the notes are aplenty basically. So one of the things that is really important that I do a lot too is I think to myself, imagine how I would feel if I didn't have this opportunity and how much I would want it before getting it. So like I have to remind myself, like, think about where you were before you had this opportunity and how much you really wanted this opportunity. And just remember that you wanted this. So like you have to do it. You got to get like push through it. The thing that was probably not good is I used to push through even being sick. Like during, I would say like most of the pandemic, I didn't get COVID, but like I would get other things like the flu or something like that. And I would still have deadlines and I would still turn stuff in, which was probably not wise, but I also was just really grateful that I had the opportunity. So like I just worked through it, and I don't recommend that obviously, but it's still like a personality type thing where like I still, even to this day, I still work through like really harsh conditions because I just don't want to let down a team of people who are relying on my one little thing to complete the picture. It's really try to remind myself a little bit of like just remembering like you wanted this, so you got to show up and do it.
Yeah, man, dude, I feel you on that because I remember before I got this job, I was working warehouse for years, always just like struggling musician, tour every now and again, have to quit a job. And then it's like when I finally got this job, I remember I kept my boots that I used to wear when I worked at the warehouse as like a reminder, like, remember what you used to do. So it's like, that's what you don't want to go back to. Eventually I threw them out because they just stunk. But
I did that one too, man. Warehouse work, I did that too. It was brutal in the lighting industry. I worked for this company in New Jersey that did like lighting for, the White House. Like it was huge. We used to travel all over the place, and it was like all the truss and all the iron and all the crazy stuff that you had to deal with. And it was like the hardest work that I've ever done in my life. And dude, I think about stuff like that all the time, actually. So I totally relate to that. I'm like, man, I don't know if I could ever go back to that ever again. Like union breaks and like just getting orders together and going home and you're just completely shot. You have no drive or desire to do anything else because your body's just completely exhausted from it. It's a brutal time. It definitely reminds you like, oh, you're pretty lucky that you're doing this. So don't get too comfortable, work harder.
Yeah, that's the stuff I think about. And that always kind of like keeps me in line. If you ever start to feel sad, just think about the times that you were actually sad. Right. And that should make you feel a little bit better.
Like, so, you're bummed out. You're bummed out that you got to, turn in some music by the end of the week.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay. Get over it, buddy.
Yeah.
So what's your day-to-day look like with working with Riot Games?
So I'm a contract composer. So, I know basically things change constantly. Like we thought that an internal beta was due at a certain point, and, like that changes. And then the corporate side of things for the people who work there is like very employee first, and they make sure that people are comfortable and, like have a happy work-life balance. And then on the other side, there's people like me who are like, chomping at the bit to get work done. So regardless of what I'm doing, I try to stay really active. I always have a lot to do. And because I'm contract, I can work on it as many things as I want. I don't have a non-compete anymore. So generally speaking, I'm a night owl. I really like working when people are asleep. I don't like being bothered by like, the garbage guys and my dogs barking at him or the mailman and stuff like that. It's just a distraction that I get like kind of mad scientist like about stuff. Like if I get interrupted, I get like really crabby. So like I've been notoriously like my whole life just a night owl. I like being left alone. So most of the daytime though, I spend my time networking or on calls or just catching up with, my band's like it's a pretty active band. Like it's a lot of work because we have a record label and a lot of stuff to do before a record comes out next year. And then I work with bands too. And then I'm always getting hit up by musical instrument companies or, software companies to write music and launch stuff. So I'm always busy. There's always something to do, but I try to do all of my, I guess, clerical stuff early in the day. And then at nighttime, it's, I get to work until the late hours. And, yeah, I guess it's a quality over quantity thing. Like I might not work 10 hours straight, but the amount of like focused detail and achievement of like progress, I guess it's a higher percentage than like how it used to be for me, where it was like a lot of figuring stuff out. Now I really know what I have to do and like how to get to the things that I want. And I'm hitting a stride with the ability to communicate the stuff that I need to get done. So, well, here's the other thing too, is my team I work with like super talented people. So they catch everything that's wrong and everything that's right. So when we do our demo derbies twice a week, there's always revisions. It can sometimes be biblical, it's incredible because the attention to detail that these people have it's astounding. I haven't dealt with it before. I'm really good at doing that for other people, but I'm not good at hearing that within my own stuff sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, sometimes it's just, going through notes to make revisions and get it ready for the next demo derby, and then just dropping it again. And then, cool, sounds great. Actually, can we dial this back? Can we add this? Can we take this out? There's a harsh note here. I don't know about this. Can we change this chord? Like maybe this instrument would be good. It's a lot of work.
I haven't heard the term demo derby before. I like that. So how many people are listening and giving you feedback?
So in the weekly meetings, we have the two main composers that are contracted. So it's me and one other composer. And then we have people working on more of the interactive part of the game that are doing things like kind of in between the gameplay type of stuff. And then we have the one person is an in-house composer at Riot, and he's kind of overseeing things from that perspective. And then we have our audio lead, and I think we have one other person I'm forgetting. But it's quite a bit, like for one call, and we all like turn in music every week basically. And then sometimes they have the entire team that's working on the game listen to the music, and then it's usually really positive. I almost feel like it's kind of ruinously positive because like for me in particular, I'm always looking for that feedback. I always used to like play a show with my band, and when somebody told me you were great and I know we messed up, it always like really bothered me. So I'm always like looking like, don't tell me it's great. I want to do better. Like how am I going to make this better for everybody? Like finally people are like really taking soundtracks as serious as they should. They should have all along, by the way. Like the game audio world's like super new. It's compared to film and the music world. Yeah. But it's really becoming what it deserves to be, which is like a really powerful source of music. And I just want to do a good job. I don't want to suck. So tell me where I'm doing a bad job. Like, don't tell me I'm doing a great job. I need to hear some feedback here. And it's just always positive from the greater team. And I want more feedback. But sometimes we'll get something like, hey, this is a little bit too much. Because we have to take into consideration like the way that the music will affect gameplay. That's really important. Is this too stressful for a player? Which also we're very lucky because our audio lead is a former pro fighting game contender, and he knows games, like he knows everything in the world. So like if we do something that doesn't fit, he's gonna know immediately. Yeah. So.
Is there any one thing that you've heard feedback wise that really kind of like changed your approach in any kind of way, or is it usually just more sort of subtle orchestration things, or is there any like one thing where someone gave you a note that you're like, wow, like you really like think about that a little bit more often when you're composing?
My problem is that when I first start a track, I start with a lot. I deliver too much, and I have to do this like a scale back method. I prefer to like have too much than not enough. And I don't know if that's a good approach or a bad approach, but it's been pretty consistent that I have to scale back the top lines that I write usually because they're like very solo-y, I guess is the best way to put it. Like they come off like there's not enough repetition for somebody to remember it, and that's really important to them.
Mm.
So I think I'm starting to get into the habit of like focusing on those particular things, like make sure that people are going to like remember this thing, consistently. It's like the hook part of the track, so to speak. But for the most part, I think like we all kind of understand. Actually, I think one of the notes that I get a lot too is it's really funny actually that I get this note, but like very specifically for this game is they always want guitar on it. And I don't know why as a guitar player, I don't focus on guitar first usually. So like I finally started doing that, but it's really just a matter of like, you're kind of like mind reading in the first stages of everything, right? Like you're trying to like read the background on the character, which Riot is amazing at, by the way. Like they have full, documents and slides of what the character is, what the background is, what instruments work for this character. Here's like things that you would never think about. Like, for example, there's a place in the Riot world called Noxus, and it's like I'm kind of afraid to talk about this game sometimes because the people that play these games, like League of Legends, are so protective of it. So if I get anything wrong, I'm gonna get like hate mail probably. But Noxus is imagine a country where everybody wants to grow up and become a general or an admiral or something, right? Like everybody, doesn't matter who it is. And they dominate like other places, and they kind of like when they go to war, they like take on a lot of the culture and stuff too. So they were like, like, oh, there could be like some Russian scales and like things like I would never think about that. And they have like the people who work there that work on the music, like write these things. So it's really interesting to kind of get the musicology, I guess is the best way to put it, about these fictitious places and these characters is pretty amazing. So
no, that's pretty cool that they're giving you so much sort of like creative ideas up front to really kind of even like, let you go in other places too. Like, because I was kind of helping a composer for this pitch, but it never ended up happening. But I kind of saw some of the briefs and stuff like that. And it's like, wow, it's cool to kind of see like how much stuff is kind of laid out, or even like, here's a YouTube link of something, like musical examples and stuff like that to kind of give you some, sonic ideas, not just sort of, written down creatives. But yeah, that's pretty cool that they're so detailed.
Yeah, we get like, it'll be a whole slide dedicated to like, here's 3 music references. Here's like the instrumentations that we'd like. Here's the character like personality points that should be represented in the music. There's a lot. I'm very fortunate though, like working with Marvel. I would say Riot and Marvel are very similar. I think Riot has like, I don't know how many characters they have. It's not a lot, believe it or not. It's under 1,000. Marvel has 80,000. It's huge. I mean, it's an 80-plus-year-old company that's been around forever. So it's very similar in a lot of ways. And a lot of it, is rhetorical because these characters have come out before and they have had music, they have champions themes, and they might be in the series that's on Netflix. Like there's a lot of like research that can be done to kind of understand it a little bit, but it's still a very different soundtrack than what they've done in the past. So it is also a challenge to make it work. Yeah, it's very interesting. I mean, I'm learning about the characters, and this is something I did with Marvel too, where like I really held on to the information. I was a huge fan of Marvel before I started working for them, whereas with Riot, completely unfamiliar with like the game and the characters. Like we're talking 0% knowledge. I knew nothing. So it's very interesting because I'm like learning about these characters and I'm retaining the information. I'm like, I haven't even played the game yet. I don't even know what these games look like.
So I want to pop into the metal world, or like the band world, for a second. You posted on Instagram or Twitter about some synth sound design and chaos stuff that you made for Brand of Sacrifice Purge. And this just went live 2 days ago, it looks like, on YouTube. So tell us about like how you start adding to a track.
It can be pretty tough. It really depends on what they want. That was a track that Leo from Brand of Sacrifice started and was like sending me. Actually, it was a different demo at first, and then we took that and he merged it with a new idea that he had, and we managed to make it like all kind of come together. It was pretty obvious what we wanted to achieve with that one. We wanted it to be kind of like Doom Eternal inspired. It was kind of cool because Leo is actually really good at that stuff too. He's really talented. He does all the production himself. I mean, the guy he's unbelievable. Like there's not a lot of people like this guy. He's got his own clothing company called Shibori Threads, which gets licensing for companies that are kind of out of control, like Dark Souls and stuff. It's unbelievable, like how much this guy gets done. So he does a lot. So if he wants to sound like something, like you give him time, he's going to learn how to do it. But he and I just became friends and decided like we should do something together, and we started working on that, and it kind of came together. And it's a lot of experimentation. It's like, you know, again, like mad scientist stuff, like just getting a synthesizer to sound like a scream was like one of the things that I wanted to do, like make it sound like somebody screaming. And that was just like so much compression and running it through weird pedals. I had this Metasonics pedal. It's got a very vulgar name, so I won't say it. As would be expected from Metasonics, but they're vacuum tubes, so they're like really fussy, kind of nasty sounding tubes that no matter what you do, it's not going to sound the same twice. Just doing really weird stuff. But then on the other side of things, if a band wants orchestra, that's actually the biggest challenge that I get, because a lot of times bands don't write with orchestra in mind. I don't think they even understand how orchestra works. I think a lot of bands, when they think of orchestra, they're thinking of it like a synthesizer, like one unified synthesizer. They're not like
ensemble.
Right. This isn't 100 people playing instruments and different techniques all at the same time. And they just don't think about that. So they give you stuff that's so out of control. So that's actually a lot harder than the sound design and kind of synth design. But the Brand of Sacrifice stuff is, like, for me, was just so second nature, because the Doom Eternal style is something that I just really, I didn't play the game until last year. And I wasn't like super familiar with the soundtrack, but when I first heard one song, I was just like, I think I know what's going on here, because I'm a huge fan of Meshuggah and Nine Inch Nails and Godflesh and Skinny Puppy and all this like weird industrial stuff. And I was able to kind of figure out what was going on. So it's been kind of a thing that, because I've written some tracks like that, now I get hired to do a lot of stuff like that. So with Brand of Sacrifice, it was just like, just make it sound filthy and gross and chaotic. And okay, let's do it. That's pretty much my thing. Let's do it. So, but other bands, you know, like more orchestral stuff, like Doth in particular, it's wild stuff, man. It's a lot of work. I'm also playing guitar in the band too. So we have 3 guitar players, but the first couple of tracks we did, Ale and I track guitars, and we didn't really write with orchestra in mind completely. Like, it kind of was there, but then the rest of the record that we wrote was very orchestra centric. And Ale's like, his father's he was the conductor for Israeli Philharmonic. Yeah.
Nice.
So Eyal's he's a genius when it comes to this stuff. So we just really focused on making orchestra work for the music, which is very uncommon when people are doing orchestra at this point, unless you're Francesco from Flesh God Apocalypse. He's amazing at it. There's a couple other people who are great at it. Christos from Septic Flesh is also, he's unbelievable.
Yeah. Love that
there's
band.
a lot of people like that. In fact, I'm going to start working on, I think it's Allegiant is how you say it. Greg Burgess, I've known him because I worked on Nuclear Power Trio, and I'm going to start working on that. He's also brilliant with writing out stuff too, because he's a classically trained classical guitar player.
Nice.
Yeah, it's a very tricky world to write in, because you can really make it sound like shit if you don't have the right material to work with, you know.
Yeah, especially if you're not crafting the music. Like the link that I sent you, the stuff that I wrote years ago, was like my first sort of like experimentation. Because I remember like back in like mid 2000s, I was like, I want to do a band that's like combining like the orchestral side of Demu with like Suffocation. Like, that's what I wanted to do, but I had no idea how to fucking do it. I had no tools. I didn't know about composing with MIDI or anything. You know what I mean? But I was like, I never heard anything like that, because I always wanted to combine those two elements. So that's like, it's different when you're sort of writing with that in mind. Like, oh, like this is like a simple riff, and then there's like choir. But then when it's like, you know, tech death and there's guns blazing, and it's just like, you're trying to have, you know, the whole orchestra going at 11. It's like, bro, that's like, and then they're like, I can't hear the blah, blah, blah. It's like, you're not going to, man, unless it's like maybe the orchestral only version or something. But, you know, but then you guys got guys like Ishan, who he just recently put out, or he's coming out with a new album, I think next year. It's like full orchestra, full, you know, doing what he does. And like, it's just sounds amazing. So it's like,
he's been into that for a while.
Yeah. He's been doing that for a long time. And yeah, he's just getting better and better. Like when you're doing stuff for bands, do they normally send you like guitar profiles, or how do you kind of like craft like melodies or the arrangement around it? Because that's actually how I first found out about you, was because I've been following AL and like you know, Unstoppable Recording Machine podcast and just everything, Nail the Mix, everything that those guys have been doing for years. And I saw a breakdown of you guys breaking down the orchestral stuff for that Doth song. And I was just curious, like when you're working on that for other bands, do they send you tabs or anything, or how do you kind of like craft it for what they want, or they just say just go for it? And
It depends on who the band is. I'm pretty picky about what bands that I work with. So if it's really intense stuff like Doth, for example, so we have some assets available to us. So we have this dude named Julio. He does all the transcriptions for Riff Hard. So he's a genius and has perfect pitch and can figure out like the hardest guitar solos and guitar riffs on the planet and tab them out really quickly. So we have him to do that for us. We're very lucky that we have that. It's pretty rare that I get a guitar profile. I a lot of the times when a band asks me to work on something, I ask them like what they're going to give me because that kind of helps me determine if I have the time to work on it. Because if I have to figure everything out, like if I have to figure out what they're doing, like John Brown from Monuments, figuring out his guitar parts was a nightmare.
oh
It's
man, I
like,
can imagine.
dude, his guitar playing is completely insane. And it's just really fast and crazy. And that was like the most time consuming part was like figuring out his guitars. But I love John's style of playing and I love John as a person. So I wanted to work on it. But like normally I wouldn't do that because that's a lot of time lost. His riffs really are difficult to figure out. But if it's like intervals, for example, that's a completely opposite story where Aaron is as prepared as you can possibly get. I kind of wish there was like how to be in a band academy and all bands had to go to and get certified before they put out a record because he would be the goalpost, I think, for that because he's so organized and detailed and gives you a spreadsheet and that's what we do in Doth. So I'm used to that, right? So like we have spreadsheets of like where to be injecting sound design, synths, orchestra, etc., what it needs to sound like, all perfectly mapped out. Aaron's very similar and also provides MIDI and all that stuff, which is great. Some of the tracks that I worked on with him, actually, there was one that we worked on with Evan Marion. He's the bass player for like Tigran Hamasyan and Alan Holdsworth. He ended up sending me MIDI, but at first I was really worried because it was a really technical song, and I was like, I don't know if I have time to work on this because it was so detailed. But he ended up having it, so I kind of got lucky. So at this point, I think it's pretty safe to say, like, I get MIDI at a bare minimum.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes bands and the people in the bands don't know how to export that stuff correctly, so that can be a little bit of a challenge because you'll end up getting like 40 tracks of MIDI and they're not labeled correctly because they didn't know how to do that. So it's like,
Yeah, or they all start at the very beginning and they don't line up with where they're supposed to be, and you're just like, what's going on here?
exactly. Yeah. For a Legion, they're going to have everything in advance. So I'm very lucky to have that because that probably would have been tough to be able to pull off because it's really fast music. Again, like metal is just so fast that it really comes down to, do I have like some help with getting this rolling at least? Because we have to spend so much time humanizing and making things sound real because there's no budget for live orchestra. So I can't have, an engraver come in and get this stuff sorted out for me. Like I have to do this all myself.
Yeah.
But if I got a guitar profile, I'd lose my mind. There's no way that's an immediate sign. Like I can't work on this. Like you guys are not ready for this type of work, unfortunately, because it's really just like a sign of thinking that orchestra is just something that you just drag and drop MIDI. It's like, no, we need to talk about like how to respect orchestra first. Then we can talk about working together.
Yeah. I was wondering, like, what advice would you give for aspiring composers looking to transition into doing music for video games? Because I know on your website you mentioned that you've kind of was it like you did some sort of kind of teaching or like helping?
Yeah, I've done I did a mentorship once upon a time.
Mentorship.
I didn't expect to get so many people applying for it, so it kind of made it really hard for them to get into the course. Like it was my first time doing something like that, and got like 60 people like reached out to me about being in it. And I was like, yeah, but how many of you are serious here? So I made it really difficult. I just made it how I would approach it. So I was like, are you willing to like step out for 15 minutes, even if you're at like a wedding or something like that? Can you like go to the bathroom and take the call with the group and just check in and then like leave? Are you willing to do that? If it's a wedding, a birthday, whatever it is. And the people who said no, I didn't accept them onto the thing. And yeah, I've gone to a bunch of colleges and stuff. Like I went to Spitfire, sent me to Brooklyn College, Steiner Studios, to speak to the students there. That was amazing. The students there are so passionate. They were all there specifically for video game audio.
Nice.
And then I've done some stuff with like LA Film School too. But I love doing that stuff because I worry that like some of the information that these people get is like, it's like a satiating amount of information. Like it's just enough to like justify charging for academics basically, and it's not necessarily like helpful and like realistic, so it can be misleading. So sometimes I show up to these places and I'm like, you really don't need to be here. I'm just pointing it out. Like if you ever start like getting stressed out about like paying the bills here, just stop going. Like it's not you're not going to get a job because you have a degree over somebody else. Like if you're super good at what you do, you don't need that. I don't have a degree in this. My background, I have a master's in forensic psychology. It has nothing to do with this.
That's pretty cool, actually.
It's neat. It's helpful because I understand people and characters and how they work, but it's, it's not entirely relevant. Like nobody's going to hire me because of that degree. If you want to be an assistant, you got to get a degree. That's what they're looking for, somebody to that has a degree in something that they didn't get a degree in. So it's like a fill in the blank type of thing. So I do sometimes I look at like the professors when I'm like talking to the students and I'm like, oh my God, did I piss somebody off just saying that? Because I can tell that I'm saying something that's a total no-no. And then sometimes the professors would like completely agree with that. Like,
yeah, you just see them with their arms crossed, like kind of nodding their head, like, I mean, he's not wrong.
He's not wrong. You do not have to be here.
Yeah, just roll up in there like Gary V. First off, I'm going to let you guys know that none of you need to be here. You can just leave right now. Wait, don't leave. You can leave after I'm done talking, but you don't need to be here.
Yeah, maybe it's a New Jersey thing. I know he's from New Jersey too, so it's possible. It's just it's natural for the place that I grew up for people to just tell it like it is, and there's no sugarcoating. It's called ruinous empathy. Just giving people a pat on the back and telling them like this is what you're supposed to be doing, and it's like completely detrimental to their success and their well-being. It's just not a part of our vocabulary.
If you could offer one piece of advice to someone who's gonna ask, like, I want to be a composer for whether it's like film or video games or any sort of entertainment medium, what would you say? If you're like, I got to give you some my best advice, what's the one piece?
I'll give a couple of pieces in one chunk because I think that they're kind of all tied together. The first thing I would say is like, if you are copying other composers and trying to learn how to do what they're doing, so you think that by creating music like them, you will also get gigs like them, stop doing that because it's really difficult. The amount of people who rip off Hans Zimmer is astounding considering how difficult it is to get gigs in the industry and how many people are doing it. But just, I mean, for the sake of like contributing to the advancement of the art form of making music, just don't copy other composers. Like find your own voice, and to do that, listen to as much music as humanly possible. If you're trying to get into the video game industry or you're trying to compose for film, then you should be like an unhinged amount of passionate about the industries that you're trying to get into. Like when you talk to the people at the studio or the producer that you're talking to, you should be permeating passion for the art form and be able to talk about it instead of just like looking like you want a gig, like you got to show up being really passionate about it, like be able to talk about it, talk about film. When they mention a director or they mention a cinematographer or something, be like, oh yeah, I love Roger Deakins. He's amazing. It's one of my favorites ever. I love the way that, he did color treatment, and I don't know, I'm just like rattling it off, just being passionate is really important. Cause I think a lot of people just really don't want to work a day job and they really want to just, I love music so much. And I want it. Well, okay. But like, you got to be passionate about this. You got to learn, like do some research. You don't just get the gig cause you really want it badly. You got to provide a lot of, you got to build trust with people.
You got to have attributes.
Exactly. Yeah. You got to have the attributes. You want your character to like be as even as humanly possible. You don't want to like have no stamina, but all power. That's not going to get you very far. And then I guess the other thing is, aside from like becoming uncommonly creative with your music art form, is just be ready to put in the extra mile, because I think that it's growing that there are like assassin level composers that are out there, and there are going to be people who will do anything to get jobs at this point. So you have to be really, you have to be competitive enough, but you also have to be humble and you have to be compassionate and be genuinely happy for other people succeeding and not getting too caught up in trying to find your own opportunities. It can feel a lot like swimming with sharks, and you got to just kind of look past that and be happy for people. Be like genuinely happy for other people succeeding. It's really good for you. And I guess one of the most important things, I talked about this at Game SoundCon back in October with my friend Mason Lieberman, who's the audio director at Tencent, and Koyo Sonai, who's he's a Japanese video game composer agent. We had a whole panel on helping other people. One of my favorite things to do ever, and I don't know why it's one of my favorite things. I don't know where it comes from. I don't really know anybody in my family who does the same thing, but I love helping people out. Like when somebody's like, hey, do you know somebody who like can do this? Do you like, hey, I really love that library you're using. What is it? And like, I'll be like, oh, dude, let me connect you with them. They're awesome people, and you're like, you're an amazing composer. I'm sure they'd be happy to talk to you. Or yeah, sure, I'll take a phone call with you. You want to like learn about what I'm doing in my career? If that'll inspire you and it made you want to reach out to me through email, sure, I'll get on the phone with you. I have no problem doing that. I love helping people out. And I do it without expecting anything in return. In fact, I would say out of the hundreds of calls I take a year to talk to people and try to help people out, I rarely ever get anything out of it other than like that person, it was a success for them. Whatever it is they were looking to do that day, it worked out. So I think doing that for other people is just good for you on a personal level. You learn a lot about where you're at by talking to people about the things that you know. If you get asked a question where you don't have an answer, it makes you realize like, wow, I have a lot to learn still, which is great. So yeah, just help other people out and be happy for people who are, when I see somebody get like crabby about Lady Gaga, doing work on the Top Gun soundtrack, and it's like, wouldn't you kill for that opportunity to like do a soundtrack for a movie and like get to hire one of the most famous pop singers in the world to like do the soundtrack, like do a part of a soundtrack? That'd be amazing. You'd kill for that opportunity. So why are you so upset that they did that? Like just be happy for people. There's nothing wrong with that.
Yeah, that's great. That's great advice. It's funny. It's kind of like seeing people give someone like Hans Zimmer crap for like a score that he did. Cause like you were saying, like everyone wants to copy Hans Zimmer, but it's like, he's like kind of always like reinventing himself or trying to probably like every movie, like completely like throw everything out and do it again. And then people are like, I don't know, man, that score is just like, they could have did it better. And it's like, dude, don't be mad because it's Hans Zimmer doing his thing. It's just
you do it.
Like, yeah, exactly. And then you'd probably like cry and crumble under the pressure of doing a big AAA movie score and dealing with all that.
Rarely does a person who's not qualified ever get the gig to do something that's at that level. So whoever it is that's doing it, like they very specifically, like also too, like they're not hiring a composer based on like their ability to make music. They're hiring them based on their ability to understand the thing that they're making. Like it's your ability to listen to a director talk about the story and like the bigger picture of things. Like it's such a hard thing to do.
Yeah.
And he's been doing it a long time. I'm not even like the biggest fan of his on the planet. I love what he does, but I'm not like one of those people who's like, oh, Zimmer, he's number one in the world. Nobody's better than he is. I think that people just need to learn to like not be so like toxic about their competitiveness and just be cool with other people succeeding. And by all means, like please don't go on the internet and say anything stupid either. That's some advice I'll give to people too, is like you got to protect your reputation. Management is crucial. Like we live in a day and age where people look into everything that you say and everything you do. If somebody sees you dogging on the company that you're applying for, like some people don't even realize like you're applying for a gig at a company that you've talked shit about once upon a time. That's kind of crazy because they're going to look that up. I know that there's a couple of studios I've talked to. They actually will straight up search your timeline for their company name to see if you said anything. So
like, I'm going to find that dirty little tweet that you said, and you're never going to get this gig.
You definitely don't want to hire somebody who's going to do that. That's for sure.
Yeah. Watch your tweets.
We're all new to that. Yeah. Watch your tweets. But yeah, we're all kind of new to that. I don't know. It's just a day and age where I just think people just need to be more humble and be cool with learning and find a community. That's what I love about the video game world, by the way. I haven't felt a sense of community for half of a decade up until, the video game world. You go to a game audio conference or something and everybody's like hanging out and like having a good time together. And it's like, wow, I don't really feel that with the film world. Like you go to like an event for something film related and like everybody's like looking at each other like, how much value do you have? Like, are you as good as me? What can I do? What can I get? And it doesn't really feel like a community as much as the game audio world does. It's only a criticism for the sole purpose of I hope that changes at some point, because it's just an observation I made, but it doesn't feel like a community. And in the same way that like the pop world doesn't have a community. You don't think of like the most famous pop singers and you're like, oh yeah, the pop community is really, there's no such thing. It's just like a community of people that are consuming the product specifically. So yeah, I think it's important to like engage with the community and become a part of it and do as much as you can for it. Like if you build your community and you're a part of building that community and you're a part of contributing to it, then it's very likely that you will succeed along the way without even trying. It just kind of comes together that way.
Very well said.
Killer, man. Well, I've got 3 quick questions for you, and then we will wrap this up.
Sure.
The first one is best recent purchase under $100.
I say flatulence, is that pandering? Um,
Hey, this is your choice here. We're not putting words in your mouth.
I would say that you see that thing in the background over here. It's like a glowing record
Hmm.
to it. It's called a Vylumi, Vylumi. This dude Andrew made this thing. It's a display for your records that is perfectly the shape of a record, and it lights it up. It's the coolest thing because like I buy a ton of records. I buy so much music. That's another thing too. Is like buy music as much as you possibly can. If you're
Hmm.
not buying music and then you complain about nobody's buying your music or listening to it, it's like, well, take a look in the mirror. But I like buying records, and you don't even know how amazing they are until you hold it up to something like this. It's incredible. I love it. It's one of the coolest things that I bought. And it was only like $60. So that thing's great. I love it. And if you have one, that means that you probably have records, which A plus, you're buying actual music.
Nice.
Um, but I think like plugins wise, something that I've really enjoyed recently is Devious Machines Infiltrator 2. I don't know how much it is. It's one of the coolest things that I've used in a while. Also, Freak Show Industries, their plugins are completely insane.
I like their website too. Yeah.
Oh, it's total chaos. And he's a madman.
Yeah.
It's
I feel
really
like I'm
cool
about
stuff.
to go on the dark web going on that website. I'm like scared to click on
Absolutely.
anything.
Yeah, I know. It's like the bottom of the iceberg level meme type of stuff. It's like real dark, but it's really cool stuff, and it's fussy like a lot of modular stuff can be. So like when you like the same feeling you get working with modular stuff where you're like, I don't know what's going to happen. Let's turn knobs. Oh wow, this is weird. I can't reproduce it. It's like the exact same experience.
Nice.
So I really like that a lot too. And then one other one that I'll mention is somebody looking for a really good drum library. I'm using this thing like all the time at this point with the game that I'm working on just for the pre-production. But the Tony Royster kit by Mixwave is incredible. Tony Royster Jr. did a drum kit with Luke Collins. He's the drummer for everybody. I don't know. He plays for everybody.
Oh yeah, that gnarly 12-year-old prodigy. I remember seeing videos of him when he was a kid years ago, and now he's
Yeah.
just playing for like Jay-Z and
Oh, he's
everybody.
amazing. Yeah, he was a Dennis Chambers protege. His drum library is incredible. There is not one that sounds like it so far, and it's working perfectly for this game because like we're doing stuff from like it's like hybrid, like gent mixed with R&B, mixed with hip hop, mixed with the Doom Eternal style sound sometimes. Then sometimes like it's all over the place.
Nice.
And this drum library, for some reason, as soon as I got it and I loaded it and started playing with it, it clicked better than anything I've used so far.
Crazy.
I don't know why that is, but it just sounds great. And I love the fact that it's a drum library made by drummers. That's
Mhm.
also kind of crucial. A lot of drum libraries are made by people who just want to make drum libraries. And this one actually sounds really damn good. And it's definitely under $100, I think. So definitely
Nice.
recommend that one.
I'll have to check that out. The next question is a recent podcast or TV show or movie or video game that you've been enjoying.
TV show, I would probably say Succession is one that kind of blew my mind. When it was done, I was bummed out. It's like, oh God, why can't like I wish it would come back. I still think that. Really love that one. Podcast, I'm a huge fan of Bobby Lee's podcast, Tiger Belly. I think it's hilarious.
Okay.
He actually, believe it or not, like once in a while will mention really obscure music, and I love that about him. Like he went to the same high school as Tina Guo, and
Wow.
he mentioned her on a podcast episode with I don't know what Blake's last name is, but the guy from Workaholics, and they were talking about her, and it's just like Bobby Lee like is kind of a little bit of an OST nerd. So I actually kind of like it because he's hilarious and they make fun of him a lot and he handles it really well. But and then I would say Made in Abyss kind of crushed me too. It's an anime that came out, and the soundtrack. This is a really bold statement, but I think Kevin Penkin's probably one of the best composers on the planet right now.
Okay.
He's done some stuff with Nobuo Uematsu. He's an Australian composer. Made in Abyss is an anime series that is like one of the most emotionally devastating things. I'm not like a huge anime person.
Yeah.
I haven't watched more than like 6 anime things in my entire life, and I have never finished one. Made in Abyss, the last episode, I was so afraid to watch it because I didn't want it to end that like I put it off for weeks. I was like, I don't want to finish it. It's so good. And I
Oh,
also
no,
am like
that
afraid
is.
of getting devastated. The music's incredible though. The first episode, the way it opens up and the way the music kind of comes in, and then like as the show progresses, it's unbelievable. It's such a dark series. It's about kids going through like the craziest stuff that you could possibly imagine. It's incredible. I can't recommend Made in Abyss. Like if anybody's kind of into anime or they love anime and haven't seen Made in Abyss, I would say that that's probably one of the best. It's better than any TV show I've ever seen. So it's pretty dang good.
Wow.
Wow.
And the music's unbelievable, like really outstanding. Never heard anything like it type of stuff. It's really good. He's incredible.
Yeah. Yeah, anime has always been kind of hard for me to get into. I think the last thing I kind of started watching because a friend of mine was recommending was like Chainsaw Man or something.
Yeah, I've heard about that one.
But yeah, or like we're me and my girlfriend were watching Death Note for
Oh
the
yeah, I
first
started
time.
that too. See,
Yeah.
like I start a lot of stuff and I'm never like pulled in enough to like go
Yeah.
all the way through with it. I did finish One Punch Man because it was hilarious. Well, the first season I watched, but Made in Abyss, I'll rewatch that like 20 more times over, and we're like, I just it's mind blowing to me. And when I saw the artwork for it, I immediately was repelled by it because it was like too cute. I'm like, this is just not my flavor, like at all. And
Right.
and my fiance is like totally into that stuff, and it's like I have a hard time trusting people when they recommend stuff to me because I'm like, I really feel like you don't know me that well. When they like somebody will recommend something to me, I'm like, this is like one of the worst things I've ever watched. Why would you tell me to watch this? Made in Abyss, on the other hand, like it got me pretty good. It's really so basically these kids are a part of this area on their planet that they live in, and there's this hole in the center of the earth, and you can descend into it. And when you go down, you can't go back up. So like if you go down, that's it. There's no going up. If you start going up, you start losing your humanity and your body like falls apart. It's so dark and
wow.
because it's kids, so it's like kind of horrifying. And the music's just beautiful, and like the world that they created is very unique. Like it's on the same level of like I don't like Willy Wonka level stuff. Like it's really out there kind of stuff. It's very imaginative. There's like nothing is a copycat of anything else. It's really unique.
You piqued my interest, man, and I don't even really like anime, so I don't know. Might have
I'll send you a track to check out. Like if you listen to music and you hear and you're like, wow, this is good. Like if that's enough to get you to check, I mean, it's really unbelievable music, by the way. Like I'm a huge like Pat Metheny group fan. I can hear some influence on the show from that. Kind of reminds me of Porcupine Tree sometimes. Kind of reminds me of Tigran Hamasyan. Yeah, it's really good. And then the orchestra that they have, like it's really good. It's not super typical, but sometimes they pander a little bit to that style. You know, it's like, oh, this is anime music for sure, but it's not very common that they do that.
All right, my last question for you is, what are your goals for the next couple of years? What's next for Jesse?
Well, since I'm so new to the game industry and it's been so inviting, I definitely want to keep, you know, pursuing that as an option. I feel the most at home so far in the game audio world. Definitely feels like my place. So I definitely, and you know, we're going to be working on this game for quite a while, so that'll be into the late part of next year. So I'm very thankfully going to be working on the game for quite a while, but I just definitely want to keep going. There's so much to do still, so it's like, wow, I can't even imagine doing anything else. But I'm definitely, I would love to work on some stuff. Very specifically, I'd love to work on a horror game at some point, something that like isn't just typical screechy, scratchy kind of metallic sounds, like something that actually people will want to listen to when they're not watching. You know, like a lot of horror soundtracks are really cool to listen to from like an analytical perspective. Like I love listening to Colin Stetson's soundtrack for Hereditary and stuff like that. Like I'm like, this is amazing. You hear so many details the more you listen to it. Like I want a horror soundtrack where like I want to listen to it when I'm like, you know, driving to the store, or like, you know, going to dinner, or, you know, whatever it is, like something that you actually can listen to. I want to do something like that at some point.
That's a good goal.
Yeah, that's one of the goals. And I also like have talked to a couple of companies about doing some libraries with them. So that might happen next year. So we'll see.
I got some irons in the fire.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to keep making music. That's all I care about doing.
Hell yeah. Any plans for you for Doth to play live next year? Or?
Yeah, probably. Our record's probably going to be out in May, I believe. They've talked about touring. We've had some offers come up. I don't think I'm going to be able to do them, but thankfully we have, you know, Raphael from Obscura and Obsidious is also in our band too. So yeah.
Shredder.
Yeah, he's our other guitar player, and I say other guitar player. We're the other guitar players. Raphael's the guitar player for Doth at this point.
Yeah, that dude's
yeah, he and Al take over. My touring days are behind me. I think I'm not too old for it because Al's older than me, but I think I'm just too comfortable in my studio. I really enjoy being home with my dogs.
Never say never, man. I didn't think I was going to play live for a long time. It was like almost 10 years. And then Hellfest was like, hey, do you want to play? And I was like, I'm not saying no to that.
I know. Yeah. See, it would really depend. Like if it was like, hey, Doth, you want to open for Meshuggah? Yes.
Yeah. See, so there's
I'll
still
do
a chance.
I'll do it. Our music's also really hard. So I'd have to like learn how to play some of the hardest music in the world. Like I can't believe I recorded some of my guitar parts once, let alone being able to play it live. So it'd be a great undertaking.
You listen back and you're like, what the fuck was I thinking? Why?
I
Why
almost
did
I almost played guitar at a mag fest a couple of years ago, or a year or so ago. I can't remember what it was, but they wanted me to play some of my like Doom Eternal inspired music live. So that was, we came really close to that. And I think we're doing some stuff at NAMM, but yeah, we'll see. I don't know. I know it's like never ever say never ever, as MacGruber would say. So you never know.
Hell yeah, man.
That's awesome, man. Well, thanks so much for coming on the Soundiron podcast. We will point people to your Instagram and your website so they can check that out. And we look forward to having you on again soon.
Yeah, thank you so much. It's great to be on here. And Craig, I'll jam your stuff on the way to Sonic Symphony tonight.
Cool, man. Let me know what you think.
Sounds good. Thanks so much, guys. Appreciate it.
See you, Jesse.
All right. Take it easy.